Okay. Well, the main thing is that you're wanting to create a state of brain entrainment. A brain entrainment really does have like a deeper stroke in the electrical wave. So ordinarily you can see that very top wave, which is beta, between 13 and 30 hertz, and it's really rapid. So it's a very, very small, minute window between the peaks. So it's able to pick out fine, minute detail in the brain. One cell from another cell, the way it's oscillating, it can pick that up.
Say that again about the window?
In other words, if something's happening much, much finer, you can store and retrieve information really quite finite. Okay? So now, always, when they hook up someone to one of those mind mirrors, mind mirrors, yes, it is an encephalograph, only it's like got about 12 or so leads. And what they're measuring is they're measuring these currents, all these frequencies, waves. And so then they average out everything. The main thing is when they hook up someone who's meditated for years, or they hook up someone who's accessing brain entrainment where there's hemisynchronization starts to occur, what they find is that there is beta there and there's also theta. So now the beta is getting the fast, fine, just that finite piece of information, because the peak in the beta is the peak and the trough, and the distance between the peaks in the wave is very, very minute. So it's a very small window. Now, always the mind mirror shows that beta is there and also theta is there as well. So now the theta is the deeper stroke, right? So it's taking the information that from the minute, and the deeper stroke having the ability to take that information down, all the way down into the brainstem and up. Okay. So the theta wave is a deeper wave, basically characteristic, taking the information more or less that ordinarily might be at the cortex somewhat, right, or somewhere, and spreading it throughout the brain. Are you following that?
So does this mean that it has more neural pathways for memory retrieval type of thing?
The beta, this type combination, yes. This combination, yes. Right, because it has a very, very, very minute window, the beta does, right? To pick up the finest subtlety of oscillation.
It's like it lays the channel deeper in a way?
Yes, like if something's vibrating here and then all of a sudden something takes it down, it's taking that characteristic down to the depth, all the way through the brain, actually. Okay, so it's always, there's a combination of all of these waves actually happening all the time. The main thing is when you reach a state of brain entrainment, there's a combination of beta and theta activity occurring. So now you'll notice when you're accessing this yourself, because it's like there's a sense of alertness, ready to act, yet really quite a relaxed feeling, very relaxed yet quite alert, acute alertness. So that's whenever you are feeling these two things together, mostly you're going to be creating a state that's involving brain entrainment.
Like sitting in the classroom, sitting in here?
Yes, quite possibly, that's been happening here, that is happening here, right? Whenever it is you're feeling the essence of genius, whenever you're feeling relaxed and quiet inside, yet really having an acuteness, you could just ready to act with something, that's occurring. If a goose, let's just say that a baby gosling is born, and then all it sees is a duck, first day, okay? Now, forever then on, the little goose, the goslings, they're going to imagine that the duck is mum, and they'll follow that duck around everywhere, all the way through life. They'll follow that duck around. And the reason why is because there's very little electrical activity happening for the gosling when it's born. And anything that is happening is imprinted. it crosses a threshold level that enables imprinting to occur. Imprinting occurs when all of the senses are truly coming together to create a transform where the sensory information and motor output meet. It creates like a transform, and the more senses that are involved in that, the more solid, the more physiology is involved in the memory. So then you only have to smell a scent or tune into the tone that's used or something like that, and you can access some state. So part of hypnosis, the reason why you might use hypnosis, truly is to be able to get the person into a state where imprinting occurs. Now, imprinting can occur without necessarily having to create a trance state, but trance is one way of being able to create various states, in fact. So the person is able to go inside and access information and join things together, in fact, that ordinarily the person would be kind of doing things on the outside and everything, and not so quite able to be able to join things together, which you can do when you are going inside. So you lose some objectivity, of course, when you go inside yourself, because mostly what's on the outside here is your left hemisphere connecting you, which is kind of sequencing things. And so trusting someone, a hypnotist, to be there on the outside with you, someone that can help guide you through some process, enables you to still yet have some objectivity in the whole process, because when you're dreaming you might not have the same degree of objectivity. And you can be allowed then to go even further and further inside self, to access things, truly to have access to at the brainstem level, so that you can unfreeze and refreeze programs. So that's why the tank, for instance, the isolation tank, is very good. If for any of you who are interested in working through something, you can go into the tank and be very quiet.
Working through it how?
So for instance, if you wanted some positive affirmation, or if you wanted to see yourself doing something, for instance, if you were presenting something to a local Lions Club or something or other like that, right, and you wanted to see yourself doing it well, you might go into the tank, and when you're in a very relaxed state, start to see yourself doing the things you want to be doing, actually, or say some things to yourself. Then that's when really it will really have effect at the brainstem level. So in excellence, transformation occurs far beyond any rearrangement of surface structure. It's possible for someone just to rearrange some surface structure and take care of something on the surface. However, the thing itself that's at the greater depth might not yet be taken care of.
It's like dieting, just changing your eating habits for
yes.
time.
Or, for instance, doing something to enable someone to feel a little easier about something without really dealing with the underlying thing itself. Okay, so when transformation occurs, it occurs well below the surface, well below repair of the body. It truly is occurring with the mental aspect. If the reparation can occur at the mental level, then you can be sure that the transformation will occur all the way through the being. Sometimes the change just occurs at the etheric level or at the physical level and not at the mental level. And there's a need for the change also to occur at the mental level. So transformation occurs way beyond, far beyond any rearrangement of surface structure. It comes from maintaining and developing patterns that allow you to live in excellence all the way through life. So it's a good idea to be thinking about being able to acquire flexibility. To acquire a state to become an operator, to be able to be a change agent, then you would really need to acquire masterfully degrees of flexibility. You need to be very flexible, quite incredibly, yourself. You need to develop rapport with the person that you're with, and you need to develop a degree of formlessness, meaning the person is party to the process, and that you don't have to be there for them to be doing something at all, and that what you say stands by itself. There isn't anything this person could attach to this thing that you would say. That you have the ability to vary your internal state whilst you maintain your external state constant if there was a need, and vice versa as well. That you can hold your external state constant whilst you vary your internal state, and that you have this flexibility to do this. We're going to do a flexibility drill today, which we call the New Orleans flexibility drill. And basically what we're going to have to do in threes, or four is probably a better number, is you'll each of you share with each other what really pisses you off, what really gets your goat, what really kind of upsets you in some way. Somebody's really going to come over and everybody's going to come over and scream stuff and really be right in your face about this. And before you do this, you're going to have access to resource state, and you're going to be holding that resource state constant whilst people really have a go at you and just say stuff that you think would ordinarily rile you. In the military, of course, that's what they do to the soldiers, right? Because they don't want people answering back. They want people just to act and do, and they want this soldier to be able to have their internal state constant whilst they vary their external state and vice versa. So quite often the sergeant major will come up to someone and scream something in this person's face, and they just more or less have to be just like allowing that to be regular, not to allow anything to rile the person.
A severe punishment if they do.
Yes, I mean, peeling spuds or something. So now, the very first thing that we've talked about is acquiring flexibility. Okay?
So that sounds like
used to being on hands.
If you're going to deal with a client or change work that don't exactly have an agenda, you have a direction that allows for the flexibility.
Yes, that you are able to generate a large enough degree of flexibility yourself. So, for instance, that you are not the kind of person that would necessarily lie to someone to please them. Like many change agents out there, they'll just go along with somebody to please the person. Somebody in this state is definitely not lying to people to please them at all. Really having to acquire a degree of flexibility, so truly there's like a mirror-like wisdom, actually, that we have the ability to be reflected like a mirror, and we have the ability to reflect what it is that's occurring and move the person beyond, so that you are becoming the kind of coaches who are marking out where someone is and where they're going, rather than where they've been, in the way that you coach, okay? So that another thing is that there's a need to acquire flexibility, sensory acuity. You really need to be sensorily aware. In other words, if something is not working, that's information that you need to take another tack. And it would be foolish behaviour not to notice what it was that you were seeing. And it's a good idea to pace always what it is that you're seeing before you can lead somebody somewhere else. So if you can say, well, if you can see something's not working, like you've asked the person to visualise what that is, and you can see that they're kind of looking down to the bottom right-hand corner, kind of in their feelings more, and they're not seeing, and so then you pace, you say, and there's a way for you to be in that place, because the person's feeling, possibly there'll be some feelings that are coming to you that you're becoming aware of, and as those feelings you are becoming aware of, you may start to see like some of the things that are around, like you might know something about the context, that might be outside. So you might say, well, you might see some trees, maybe you may hear some sounds, but let's just say the person's still not yet seeing. So then you need to recognise this, okay? So having sensory acuity is noticing subtly the things that are occurring. So you're asking someone to get into the state, and you may see the person, leaning back. So as you know, the way the person's getting into the state is to dissociate more, and so that you're totally noticing these things, and that you have the ability to pace the person's experience. Somebody a hypnotist who is doing this gains great credibility for the subject, the client, because basically the hypnotist is using his or her words to identify with things in fact that are occurring to me, and that creates affinity. So you have this ability to incorporate. Somebody yawns a little, and you say, and the more that you're feeling that you can yawn, the more that you can feel that you're relaxing. And what a wonderful thing it is to yawn, and to flux excitatory and inhibitory transforms together to attenuate equilibrium in the brainstem. You can incorporate that. Okay, so now acquiring flexibility and acquiring a degree of sensory acuity to notice the way people are responding. Good idea to always be using your eyes to exit. When you're with people and you're presenting something, to use your eyes to exit with the people. Just like I'm doing here, noticing in fact that you're tuned, and that you're taking information in, and that I have the ability to embed and to mark out things, by occasionally, touching you with my eyes. That I'm seeing in fact that this is occurring. Because if you notice that somebody sometimes is presenting something to people, and they're not actually talking to the people. Right? This is much stronger. Plus it gets you into the habit of exiting with your eyes, so that you are drawing the information from your feelings. That's a better way to be using your voice, to really be coming from your feelings totally. Noticing the accuracy and the degree to which person's subjective experience is reflecting upon whole brain functioning patterns. That's one thing that you can really be doing with people, is you can be sensing to what degree are the patterns that as you're working with this person, to what degree are these patterns reflecting on whole brain functioning. Because if the person's thinking about something that's problematic for the person, it's possible that they're not having all their resources available to them. So you are really wanting to bring this person's resources. So the person is really in need of imagining, because they say to you that they don't have experience of being creative or having done something. So then, you're in need of eliciting some resource. And the resource might be that the person, using this person's imagination. It could be that the person really needs to be having the ability to draw information from the depth, and you need to sometimes perhaps work with the person to be able to train the person to do this from really the depth inside themselves. And always you can be using time distinctions. This is a major way that you can influence the person, by having the person go beyond this frame of reference to actually having been successful with something, or taking the person into the future so that they are learning something about what's occurring in the present, or taking someone back into the past. The more that you have the ability to do this and weave time distinction, more likely it is in fact that you're opening the circuits up for inputting something which then when the person arrives somewhere, something has already occurred that they've thought about this moment before, maybe a year before, maybe 6 months before, maybe only a day before. And when they arrive there, quite an uncanniness occurs that because you've gone through the thought process of fitting in things that would happen, and because you're seeing things in fact that were in your dream that reminding you of this thing that you want, it's more likely that as you go through the day that these things start to occur. So using change techniques to presuppose and embed success. So let's just say that Penny is sending somebody out into the field in her work. She and the person hasn't been out in the field. Penny may be speaking about the person having been out in the field and be talking about things in a manner that this person has been very successful, and presupposing the person's been successful. This would be a great aid, a great help to the person going out into the field. It's more likely that the person's going to, if you presuppose success, it's more likely that the person's going to be successful. Whatever you presuppose, it's likely that this is going to affect what happens.
Well, you're going to be in rapport with their wishes too. Their desires to be successful.
Yeah.
So there's that added rapport, or even deeper than rapport in a way, that the goals are the same. You've already presupposed that it's there. It's another.
Yes, but let's say that somebody's a little nervous about getting up on stage, right? Somebody who'd work with the person, even though the person's a little nervous about getting up on the stage, working with the person and presupposing that success has occurred, like afterwards shaking the person's hand, saying that they really did an excellent job, and presupposing the person was successful, it just lends more energy to that. However, if that's true, we're in need of making sure that what the goal is, in fact, actually is ecological. It's something that can occur, that we're not setting something up that's going to be impossible for someone, that truly we're setting things up that are possible.
Right. That's what a good coach does.
Yeah.
And that's what we are.
So, you can be, as you're with somebody, using whole brain functioning techniques yourself to rapidly be imprinting whole brain functioning programs through the language patterns that people are using and through the way the person's using their body. So it would be no good, of course, like really trying to have someone kind of move through something, right? And they're upset about something, and you see that they're really kind of protecting this feeling of upset. We'd be better off, so if you're making sure that the body position truly is going to be helping the person move through something. So certainly to have the person's heart out, truly to be able to look this thing level, it would be really beneficial. Excuse me. So instigating whole brain functioning patterns that tap into positive and pervasive attitudes that help facilitate the process of change occurring. You are really wanting to tap into positive and pervasive attitudes with the person. So sometimes you're truly accessing resourceful physiology first. And remember that sequence that we shared with you, which is really a framework that for the behaviour change to occur, that you wrap the experience with visiting frame first, then a resource frame, then an outcome frame, then a trust frame, then a frame that's involving our ability to co-create, then a frame that's involving some degree of challenge actually, and then a frame that's involving integration about what occurred, and then a future pacing the change and the integration with the information into a context where the information will be used. It's more likely then that the information will be used if you do it this way. Okay, so that's those frames of excellence. That's in the technician's manual. that you have the ability to catalyse internal generators in the person, that you're involving some degree of motivation, achievement, recognition, learning or growth, that you are eliciting one of those four things or those four things to be in there, so the person has motivation through this. And sometimes you are actually building a state-specific threshold for someone to move through something. So let's just say somebody really gets angry easy, so then what we could do is we could find out what the submodalities are of the way this person gets angry. I might do this by asking them just to imagine that there's a paper cup out in front of them, and I find out how do they make that paper cup more important. Do they come in toward the paper cup? Does the paper cup come toward them? Does the paper cup get bigger? Does the paper cup get larger and brighter? And I'll find out what the submodalities are of the way this person makes this very important. And then I'll use those submodalities to create a threshold that pushes the person through the ceiling of this ability to get angry. So for instance, let's say that this person gets really angry with their mate. They get real upset easy. And let's say the way this person does it is, the way they make something much more appealing to themselves is to blow this thing up. It sort of comes really big. It goes like this. So then what this person sees is they see their mate really going to town or something like that with something, and they see this, and then they see this again, and they see this again, and all of a sudden it really kind of starts to be enough, and then the person really kind of is real mad about things. So then what I might do with the person is I'll have them see their mate, and I'll use this submodality so that this is the kind of thing that's happening with the scene. And if they're really getting mad inside, then it's working. The technique that you're using to create a threshold level is working. And you ask the person to keep going through until they blow themselves out the top end. It's like eating cake, right? And then all of a sudden you've eaten so much cake you just can't eat any more cake. You've had enough. So that's a way of blowing the person out through that threshold, so that it's much more difficult. They can be angry, but they can't get angry as easily.
Yeah, or less often.
Yeah, right. It's just because they've blown themselves at the top end of that. You see, saturated all the neural pathways that supported that program. And just like if you eat something like over and over again, all of a sudden, possibly, you just go, God, I can't eat anymore. Well, it's a similar kind of brain process that's occurring. So sometimes you need to build state-specific thresholds in order for a person to be able to bring about change. And so that's one level that you may be working with the person on. In a moment we're going to come back and be talking more about hypnosis. And for the moment we're still yet talking about change techniques, things that you can do actually.
David, when you're talking about blowing it out the end, you're talking about taking it, condensing it really quickly and have the person saturate and blow it out.
Yes, because what the person does is they see their mate, really going to town about something which was something really like gets the person, right? Really kind of, all of a sudden they become mad after this activity occurs for a time being. So what I do with the person is they see this activity happening and it's and they just keep doing this. And then I say to them, if this is really getting to the point that you are really, really getting mad and you can really feel it building up and building up, keep going until finally it just blows you out the top end. And so the person keeps doing this in their mind, right? And they just keep doing it, and all of a sudden and then all of a sudden it doesn't cut the mustard like it did before.
Do you think that happens in real life when you've dealt with a situation so long that you just...
Yes.
Give up on it?
Yes, usually there's a process.
You just start getting into it or something.
Yes, usually there's a process like this, right? usually somebody does something and they do it, and all of a sudden it makes you mad.
Yeah.
Really mad,
And then
right? And then they do it and do it again, and it makes you mad. And then finally, like after years of going through this process, or maybe after like some time of going through this process and not getting anywhere, and getting mad and mad and mad and mad, and finally realising it's just not work, it just doesn't work. You know, it's possible that you blew yourself out the top end of something. Okay. So sometimes there's a need to reframe some perceptual filter, actually, in order for the person to be able to achieve the change, the process of change. There's a need to work with the person's perceptions of things and the perceptual filters with which they are seeing things. Most people are very sensitive to things that happen to themselves, and many other people might not be sensitive to that at all. Somebody might say something to someone else, they might say, "Oh, you slob," or something like that, right? And just like, or you tramp, or something like that. Just like in a kind of a joking way. And yet the person has taken this to heart incredibly. And so sometimes actually you may be needing to work through some perceptual filter for the person to go beyond that. Sometimes there's a need for them to see sometimes the humour there, that somebody could call me a tramp, fine. Or somebody could call me a name, and fine, really.
So this change work takes place within the individual in order to deal with something that's going on.
Yes, so for instance, let's say the person's really got an issue about being hugged and loved, and they're just their parents, their father or their mother really just doesn't hug them in this way. And they've come to you and they've said, my parents don't love me. And so there's a complex equivalent that's been created between hugging and love. The perceptual filter may need to be that, the change needs to occur in this person, not their parents necessarily. Okay? If it changes in their parents and their parents can hug the person, well, I think that's great. But let's say that there's really something going on with mum and dad, they really don't do this. And so what I need to do is work with this person's perceptions, in a way that they're able to see that mum and dad love them, and they may have some difficulty a little bit kind of hugging them because it's a little bit out of the ordinary for them. I need to work with this person's perceptual filters that they can see other things, in fact, that enable them to see love, So then you'll be using your non-verbal behaviour also as being instrumental. So sometimes you are talking about the stuck state, with somebody, and they're talking about it, and you're just bringing your hand out like this, and little by little the stuck state becomes anchored to this spatial location and this gesture. And the resource may be, the eyes up like this when the person's actually, accessing the resource. This is the way that you may anchor it with the person as the hypnotist. So then whenever you're wanting to actually get the resource, and actually it's possible, even with your analog, somebody's talking about something and they don't have a clue what you're doing, but you're doing things. What you've done is you've anchored the stuck state with some analog that you've done. And then when the resource state happens, what you're doing is you're really bringing the two together and integrating the two, actually, and you've done that with your analog. So you'll be learning to mark things out with your analog, and we're going to be going over this. So sometimes also too, you'll notice, especially those of you who are presenting things to people, that sometimes you may be marking something out that's to do with a time factor, about the orderliness with which we're going to go through this. And then we may talk a little bit about the lightness and the state preparation of a feeling of being relaxed to hear this information, and to talk then about the sequence of things that we're going to go through, a model in a moment, explaining some techniques and things that are involving hypnosis, and that the way that we're going to do this is we're going to do this to make sure that this information really is embedded going in. But anyway, let's just say that there's information that I've over here, there's information over there. So sometimes the person's actually going back over this spot to collect something. about the time, and then coming back over here, standing over here, actually accessing information that's stored over here, and that we use spatial things like this. So more than likely, if I'm working with someone on diet, I might ask them, well, think of a food that you just absolutely can't stand. It just, practically makes you puke, right? And the person thinks of a food, Can you think of a food? No?
I like it all. That would be my problem.
What about brains? Or kidneys?
We're having head cheese for lunch.
Or, I don't know.
Everything sounds good to that.
Rocky Mountain oysters or something, I don't know. God. Something. Tongue, cow's tongue.
Boiled slugs.
Boiled slugs.
Yeah, I would be like that.
What about fat? Something really dripping, greasy fat. Alright. Well, anyway, if there was something that really kind of just was off, you just thought, oh God, that's off, that's gross. Okay. And the person has their eyes closed, and I say, point to where that is. The person goes, oh God, it's over there. So what I know is, basically in the mind, this person does place stuff in this spatial location in their mind. Over here to the left, maybe bottom lower left, they might place stuff there that's aversive. Stuff that they store stuff down there that they just don't enjoy. And then I say, well now, where is ice cream? And the person goes, oh, ice cream's right here. And ice cream is right there. It's right in front of them. It's right close, right where they can see it. They love ice cream. They're just they eat so much ice cream it's not funny, okay? And they're really in need of wanting to reduce on ice cream. So, so then I might say, well, how much do you feel you'd like to eat less? And I say, oh God, I could eat half. I could eat half, and that would be enough for me easily. I can just do away with half. And so then I'll see the person do in their mind is taking half of that ice cream and now placing it down there in that spot where people store stuff that's aversive. Sometimes somebody's taken the whole category and put the whole thing down there, and then and then you make a break a statement, you talk about something else, and then you ask the person, well, how do you feel? How do you try to get back that feeling of wanting ice cream, and you use a word like try. Try is involving the possibility of failure, okay? So you're speaking to the person's unconscious mind as possible that there will be failure in bringing this back. And so then the person tries to do it and they just can't do it. I did this for a woman just like maybe a month ago with ice cream. And I said to her, well, would you still like ice cream? And she said, no, I don't care much for it at the moment. She really was loving it and eating a lot of it, and decided she just didn't want to care for it much. So she put the whole lot down there. And then later on we asked her, would she like some ice cream? And you could see, she didn't want any ice cream.
David, I did this technique with myself after I'd seen you do it with Mary, and then I saw you do it with somebody else. And so I did it on myself, and this is just a point that I'd like to understand. The food group that I moved down over here stayed there for about 2.5 weeks. And then when I checked back in, it was back
Me too.
here.
That's what I noticed too.
So I had to move it down there.
It doesn't stay.
Well,
actually, the part of the reason why it doesn't stay then is that there's something ecological to do with the food group. In fact, possibly it has estrogen in it. Maybe it has progesterone. It could have something in it that your body has always...
We have to practice the same thing, anchoring stuck states and replacing it. Well, I used that. I used it right after you taught it to us and everything. Well, it worked great. And then I found myself I didn't use it, or it wasn't successful for me.
Okay, it always is successful. It depends on the way that you're anchoring things. You see, now, external reference might not be the way that you make decisions. The way that you make decisions may be involving more of an internal, anchoring something internal, like from something visual or something auditorily inside, or from a feeling inside. So, so you can always be making sure that when you're anchoring something to trigger some response, that the anchor is using a sense that you ordinarily would be using, in fact, in your decision-making process. We're going to be doing this today. You're going to be focusing on some moment when you've been successful in making a decision. People will be finding out how you make decisions when you're successful. And when you make decisions that things are involving a little bit of a stuck state, what are the senses that are involved? So we're going to be going on to that in a moment here, actually.
Well, what I did is I just continued to do it. And I continued to put that foot down over there, and I think it's more or less has stayed over there now. It's taken about 2 or 3 months of real conscious. And I noticed...
What food was that, Jen?
It was dairy.
Dairy. Okay, you want to know something, sweetie? There's all kinds of female hormones in cow's milk. There's histamine. There's many things, in fact, that the body was
needing. I can
needing.
get rid of it. I just did put like a third of what I was taking in to there.
Yes, and so if you ever see moments where it's all coming back, it is because there's something in the milk, in fact, that you've been benefiting.
Yeah, that's what I figured.
And there hasn't been something replacing it yet.
I figured that, and then I just said, okay, well, when I notice I'm craving it again, I just check in, I eat it, and then I put it back over there when I want it.
Okay.
So it was fun. It was fun to notice that.
Yeah.
Would it be a good idea to continue to practice if you really want this change? To continue to practice it the way she said?
Yes, making sure that you've got a spot, right, that you put stuff that you think is foul, just like is off. If you've got a spot, you put stuff like that, and you put anything down there, it's really going to be associated with that stuff, actually. Yeah. And nice idea when you're very relaxed to do this, you see, because that's when imprinting is going to occur. Why wouldn't imprinting occur like if you were listening to a song inside your head and looking around the room and kind of fidgeting a little and trying to do this as well? Yes, because competing anchors, okay? So that's part of the reason why it's a good idea also to be able to involve trance.
Float tank's a great place to do stuff like this.
Yeah.
You can just move things all over the place.
Yeah, let the guy that follows you.
So, so going back to that last point, the point I made before about reframing perceptual filters, good idea to use, some expressive and provocative humour, okay? So you don't have to necessarily use trance. You can access this state for somebody, make it go through the change just by using a little provocative humour or expressive humour. So that's one path that you can use. You can playfully exaggerate something, okay? Somebody's doing something that's kind of not working out and you kind of really exaggerate it, so that gives the person impetus to move more the other way. And of course it's accepting the person if you're doing it in a playful way. You can always create choice. Hopefully you're always creating choice for the person. You can use metaphor. You can talk about a friend of yours. You can use a story which has a similar structure in it. And you can use trance states to refocus attention with the desired outcome, so that you're always refocusing the attention and keeping attention on the desired outcome. And whilst you're desensitizing stuck states, right, and making them seem unfamiliar and kind of ridiculous, moving the person further and further away from the stuck state, imagining that layers are coming between you and where that stuck state was, and that these layers are your perceptual filters that are bringing to you the things that you want, keeping you on track, keeping you in a manner of whole brain functioning, focusing on what it is that you want in life, and moving further and further and further away from the stuck state till finally it seems so unfamiliar, so vague, that you can hardly even remember how to get back there. And you've practically forgotten it, and it disappears. And it's like when you were 13, you think back to when you were 1, you go, my God, what happened on that day in a space?
Even though you're still living in a situation where what causes you to get that stuff like that happens to you all the time.
The stimulus.
Well, you see now, a good idea for that to be, become vague and unfamiliar. Because what becomes familiar then is what it is that you do when things are working.
It's kind of like when you hear a song and you think that the words are this way, and then you look at the words in the album and you see, oh, it's totally different, and then you can't remember how you heard the words before.
It's possible.